Gone. All right, come. All right. Shalom, Israel. Shalom. Yashala. Brother Tazwan Gabriel, Allah coming back at these precepts. And yet another code cut when course all honor and glory to Yahweh. But I show my shot. I'm like y'all shot, I like the righteous. Get a mighty kapakapanya, like Sakwayam. Bayata Dawad. Right, that's the honest to the elders of the house of David. Labored and doing in his truth. Patiently waiting for the second of our Lord, my shot. I'm like y'all shot. Right, and doing 20, 30, 40 plus years in his truth. Right, teaching, giving sound counsel, building up the young men in wisdom and understanding. Right, giving sound exhortation and showing what it truly means to be a sound testament of faith and endurance in its truth. Right, also, right, building, also giving a strong shalom, right, why Yahbashim Ashah, Bakatham to all the mighty Akim, right, on the highways, byways, and hedges, pushing the truth to the four corners of the earth in wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Right, of course, the mighty brothers enduring all the elements, right, the rain, the sleet, hail, the snow, blizzards, right, making that body a living sacrifice through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, right, and all the mighty men building themselves up to go on to the highways and byways, right, bidding all of the mighty brothers a shalom. Right, of course, giving a hearty shalom, right, Yahweh my thumb to all the Akwaf and his truth married and unmarried, honoring and reverencing their husbands, raising children up decently and in order, in the law, statutes, and commandments, right, doing all the mighty works of our mighty Proverbs 31 woman, right, Sirach 26, right, Titus 2, right, doing all the righteous acts of our foremothers, right, as Sarah and as the daughters of Sarah, right, foremothers of Phoebe, Tabitha, Judith, Esther, right, and Deborah, right, and also, right, cleaning, cooking, sewing, submissive, right, giving alms, charity, working with their hands, right, doing all the mighty righteous works, all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High. Right, of course, giving a strong, hearty shalom, right, white, Yahweh, my thumb, Barak, my thumb to all the mighty body and the mighty children in Israel, honoring their mother and their father, keeping the law, statutes, commandments, right, being built up and steadfast, right, through the law and light of the Most High. Right, to all Israel, all Yashala, the Mashapak, the family, far and near, right, Bidral Shalom, right, through the spirit, right, we touching on current events, right, right, there's a lot of news going on, a lot of stores, quote unquote, going out of business, right, and shutting down in these last days, man, right, and it's especially with SNAP benefits being cut off, or quote unquote so-called processing, or so-called, as they say, in limbo, and as well as, right, these businesses, going and shutting down for God knows what, right? And we know that all things are of the Most High, right? A lot of people are being heavily affected, especially our people, all right? So let's jump into this, right? Right, Shoppers is closing 4 stores in November. Find out where, right? So grocery store retailer Shoppers is closing 4 stores by early November. Its parent company confirmed to USA Today. United Natural Foods, Inc., or Incorporated, UNFI, which acquired Shoppers Food and Pharmacy in 2018, said in a statement on October 23rd that the company realizes the stores are important to those who work, shop, and live in Washington, D.C., right, Maryland, and Northern Virginia, the regions primarily served by the grocer. However, the company has decided to close 4 Maryland locations to strengthen the business for the future, including stores in Capitol Heights and Laurel, right? And that's madness, man. Right? It says that the company realizes the stores are important to those who work, right, and shop, right? And by these stores that are shutting down, you're so-called, you're taking away work, right? You had cashiers, you had those who are stocking the shelves, okay, right? And you had a lot of especially in these areas, man, right? You got a lot of Jake and Eve, man, that live in the DMV, so called, man. All right, you got a lot of our people, Northern Kingdom, around these areas, man, right? That depend on these places for food, man, right? That depend to so called shop, when they get off work. And you even have a lot of our people who depend on these places for jobs thereof. Understand? Right. So read it again. It reads, however, the company has decided to close 4 Maryland locations to strengthen the business for the future. Right. And we know what that's about, man. Right. Esau's so-called, increasing his so-called pockets, his so-called wealth. Right. If he feels as though, all right, Slack. Right. If he feels as though he's so-called losing money, or if he's so-called thinking that he can increase elsewhere, man, right, then by all means, he'll do it at the expense of the people. Right, reading on, it reads, the company previously closed other Maryland locations in Essex, right, New Carrollton, Waldorf, and Westminster. According to the Grocery Drive, a news outlet focusing on the grocery industry and its retailers, the company did not say at the time why it was closing the stores, just that the closures would happen by October 11th, man. Right? Hey, man, and Jake doesn't have so-called finances to go to Whole Foods, man. Right? Jake that doesn't have the so-called budget, man, to just as Esau to just spend $1,000 at the farmer's market, man. Right? It says the company did not say at that time, right, why it was closing the stores, just that closures will happen by October 11th, man. All right? Hey, and this is all of the Most High, man. Right? Kind of slocky. It reads, in a statement similar to the one provided to USA Today on October 23rd, UNFI told Grocery Drive the company is investing in stores as well as closing some so the business can operate efficiently. The stores will close by November 8th, and the company added that it will support team members during the closing process. When asked about how many workers will be impacted by the closures, UNFI stated that all team members at the College Park, right, Laurel County, Corey Hills, and Germantown Shoppers location could be affected by the closures. Right, UNFI added that the company supporter supports workers who want to move to other Shoppers locations if openings are are available, man. All right, hey, and that's madness, man. Right, because even if you take away, right, so-called stores, but you add, or so-called want to move bodies, right, or you want to move, bodies to other locations, man, right, hey, you still can't, right, because then you'll be quote unquote overstaffed, right? Kind of slocky. I'm gonna jump down to right, it's part of the article, right, the next part, which stores are closing according to UNFI. Right, stores closing by early November include, right, the College Park, right, the Laurel, right, the Capitol Heights, right, the Germantown, right, so-called PG County, right, lower Montgomery County area. Okay, right. It says more on Shoppers ownership changes. Every Shoppers Food markets itself as a grocer with everyday low warehouse pricing, promising to double check prices monthly so the retailer can beat competitors and save customers money as they buy everyday essentials. Right, right, and again, man, right, Jake isn't again right? Going to, the great Whole Foods, man, right? Spending, just thousands of dollars, man, a month, right? Understanding that, right, that these closings, right, are affecting so-called families, man, right? Men are, men, women, right, are so-called, being, slocky, right? You have a lot of our men, right, and women, man, right, that are going through damn hell right now, man. Right, not able to feed their families, right? Hey, and again, this isn't just going on, right, in the so-called, right, DMV, man. Right, you have a plethora, right, of locations, right, that's been shut down and closed, right, all over, right, Babylon, man. All right. Right, you have hundreds of them, man. Right, going out of business, right, being shut down, man. All right, so let's touch on this. All right, going into right, how many grocery stores are closing down all over Babylon. It reads, while an exact final number is not yet available, it is predicted that 2025 will see an increase in grocery store closures compared to 2024, right? And notice, man, it's an increase in closures, man, right? But where's the increase in more so-called openings thereof, man? Right? Where's the increased number in so-called alternative options, that aren't filled with, quote unquote pesticides, man, right? That don't have all these quote unquote chemicals, right? The, quote unquote, as they say, clone meats and, processed, just madness, man. It reads, it is predicted that 2025 will see an increase in grocery store closures compared to 2024. Some sources project up to 15,000 total retail store closures in 2025, which would be more than double 2024's figures. Specifically, major chains like Kroger plan to close about 60 stores, while others, such as Winn-Dixie, Albertsons, Safeway, and Walmart, have also announced closures, man. All right. Hey, and that's completely insane, man. Right, that's complete madness, man. It said 15,000 total retail store closures in 2025, which would be more than double 2024's figures, man. Right, and that's, man, just so-called, out of 50, so-called states thereof, on an estimate that's so-called about 300 stores per state. Now, if you have about 300 stores per state, right, that were just closed, that just went out of business, think of how many, or the square mileage or square footage, or the relative distance, right, between your average store, and base that upon the the circumference, or however man may want to put it. Think about the average distance, right, from where the average concentrated amount of people may live, right, to your nearest stores, man. Right, and if man isn't able to travel thereof, right, or if one store has to supply, quote unquote, more people that are traveling, just imagine, what that can be within the next year and the year after that, if the stores continue to to close down, right? And we're seeing what's going on, man. Right? A lot of these, as they say, a lot of these stores closings are just implemented and showing that we're getting closer unto the end, man. Right? Soon men are going to have to come to concentration camps just to eat, man. Right? Soon a man is it. If you want to eat, right, you're going to have to get down with the beast, right? You're going to have to get down with the system, man. Right? And also, right, 15,000 stores, man. Right? That's over 15,000 places, right, where no longer, right, Jay could work, right, to provide and to take care of their family, man. Right, so this place is going down, man. Right, so touching on specific store closures, right, Kroger's, planning to close, over 60 stores over the next year and a half, right? Harvey's, right, Walmart, right, Safeways, right, the grocery outlets, Amazon Fresh, right, and these stores, man, right, places like Virginia, Maryland, right, California, Oregon, Alaska, and chiefly, right, Maryland, right, California, Virginia, right. You have a lot of people inside those states thereof, man. And that's just a few. All right. And this is going all over, right, America, man. All right. Reasons for closures, it reads, right, economic pressure, right? The grocery industry is operating on tight margins, which are being squeezed further by rising costs, as they say. All right. And shifting consumer habits, shoppers are increasingly using online, right, grocery ordering, which can impact the performance of brick by brick mortar stores, man. Right. And even if you so-called, order online, right, the so-called, right, the so-called just, come in and, you still have men that do these, I believe it's called Instacart, right? These door dashers. Men still have to come in. They still have to, get these items thereof, man. So either way, right? It's a so-called, halfway excuse thereof, man. All right. Now, further on, right? It reads, why so many grocery stores are closing. Grocery stores are closing due to a combination of factors, including rising operational costs, increased competition from e-commerce, and low profitability in some locations, right? Other reasons include persistent issues like theft, which is a significant factor for many closures, as well as economic pressures and changing consumer habits that force companies to streamline and focus on their most profitable stores. All right. Right. So, of course, right, dealing with so-called tariffs, man. Right. So-called Babylon also operating within a trade deficit, man. Right. More so-called imports and exports. Right. They aren't able to, profit as much, as they right. They aren't able to profit, right, as much as they have once did in the past, man. All right. This economy overall is extremely, right, going into, right, the worst it's ever been, man. All right. The worst that it's ever been. All right. Come on, so we can touch on a few precepts right before we close out. Right, the book of Isaiah, chapter 19, and verse number 13. It reads, the prince of Zoan are become fools. The prince of North are deceived. They have also seduced Egypt, even they that are the stay of the tribes thereof. Right, and the so-called princes of this land, man, have have been extremely foolish, man, and have sought to deceive the people, right? So-called belief of making this, this land great again thereof, man. Okay, right. The so-called belief, right, that that the economy was so-called turned for the better thereof, man. But true, in reality, have entered the worst recession that it's been in, man. Right? It reads, the Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or tail, branch or rush may do, man. Right? And we're seeing that in these last days, man. Right? All these so-called budget cuts, man. Right? These government lockouts, right? An all-time all-time high, man. You got a lot of people being laid off, man. Right? And you even have these so-called stores again that are closing. Hey, men aren't going to be able to work. Right? So men aren't going to be able to eat thereof, man. Hey, if there's no so-called jobs, if there's no so-called economies, man, right? Then who is going to be buying, right, food, right, water and drink, right, at these so-called stores, man? Right, all of your businesses are being early cut and shut down, man. Right, by the Most High God. Right, let's get that in the book, right, of Jeremiah, real fast. Right, the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, and verse number 23. It reads, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations, man? Right, because Babylon was once something that was set upon high, man. Right, Babylon was once, right, so called, right, of a extremely, man, right, powerful state, man. Right, that all men flourish to, man. Okay, if you ask your elders, man, they would tell you you'll be able to so-called get, quote unquote, right, a meal, right, for 23 cents, man. Right, get you a so-called 15-cent cheeseburger from McDonald's, man. Right, gas was under 99 cents thereof, man. Right, a so-called, the economy was at its highest that it's ever so-called been and flourishing, man. Right, but what? But how has it become cut and broken down, man? Right, hey, that's the Lord's doing, man. And all these kingdoms, right, whether it's the Greeks, the Romans, right, the Persians, the Medes, right, the one of the first signs of sin, right, these nations, their economy being weakened, or one phase or one part of sin, right, these kingdoms, right before they become destroyed, right, the Lord shuts down their economy, man. Right, and whether it was the Greeks, the Romans, right, that went from using silver, right, to transition to using bronze. Right, we're seeing even in Babylon, right, how even their gold is becoming cankered. Right, their so-called currency, right, that was once, right, set as the standard, is now being replaced thereof, man. Right, read it on. It reads, how is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware, man. Right? See, Babylon isn't aware, man. Right? That's why the Lord says that his princes are fools, man. Right? And his people are deceived. Right? Because they're not as, for lack of better words, privy, right, to understanding that it's not of man. Right? It's not a so-called mystery. Hey, it's the Lord, right, that's bringing you down, man. It's the Lord that's stripping you of your strength and your garments thereof, man. It reads, and thou wast not aware, thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord, man. Right, and Esau, man, he strives against the Most High, man. Right, with his policies, right, with setting himself on high, right, to be as the Most High, to set decrees, unjust laws, right, spread wickedness, right, destroy and hold his people captive, man, and do all manner and sorts of madness, man. Right, verse 25 reads, the Lord hath opened his armory and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation, man. Right now, the Lord is opening up his armory in the last days, man. He's stirring up these nations against Babylon in these last days, man. He's causing spirits of division, man. Right? He's sending out his spirits, man, to, and the people, right, to get ready for war, man, to also rebel. Right? The Lord, he's sending his angels, man. Okay. Right, to tear it down, right, the so-called crops that thereof, man, right, that the land doesn't yield or grow, right, seed and fruit as it once did, man, all right, stirring up the minds of these kings and these nations, man, right, to draw near and get ready for war and for battle against him, man, in these last days, man, right, the Lord hath opened his armory and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation. For this is the work of the Lord God of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. Come against her from the uttermost border, open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left, man. Right? And soon, man, this place, right, the Lord said, nothing of her, man, shall be left. Right? And also, man, to open up her storehouses, man, and cast her up as heaps. Right, these stores are getting ready to be completely gone, man. Right, as we're saying thereof. Right, and let's also get that in the book of Ecclesiastes. Right, the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, the classic, chapter 12 and verse number 3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves down, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, man. Right, and we're heading into these days thereof, man. Right, where the keepers of the house shall tremble. Right, the men that oversee, right, the so-called government. Right, the men that oversee, right, the so-called society thereof, man. Right, the so-called rich. Right, the so-called ones that's in power and authority thereof, man. Right, and the strong men shall bow themselves, man. Right, all of your so-called elites, man. Right, all of your so-called your first lines of defense also thereof, man. It's going to be a quote unquote, right, every man for themselves thereof, man. Right, we're moving right towards that second Ezra 15, man. It reads, and the grinders cease because they are few, man. Right, the grinders cease. Right, meaning what? The work thereof, man. Right, the work, right, all of the so-called, as they say, right, the lower men, right, the middle class, right, those that keep the economy moving and grinding and sufficient thereof, man. These men are going to be few, man. Right, as again touched on earlier, if you don't have any men working, or if you're taking away jobs, right, then men aren't going to be so-called buying food, man. Right, or men aren't going to be so-called spending money to keep the economy going, which is going to take away even more so-called work from others, man. And guess what? That's how the grinding is going to continue to cease. It reads, and those that look out the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets. Right, all of your so-called your stores, man. Right, your restaurants, right, your so-called grocery stores, right, your so-called markets, right, your so-called clothings, right, your Macy's, your J.C. Penney's. All of these places are going to be shut down. It reads, and the door shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low, right? right? Right, all of your so-called, your soothsayers, man, right? You buy here, right? Buy there. Come get this sale. Come get this deal, man. Right? Come so-called and invest in this, man. All of these things, man, right, are going to be brought completely to naught, man. Right, thus saith the Lord. Right. Let me get one more. Right, let's go to the book of Second Ezra. Second Ezra, chapter 6 and verse. I started at verse number verse number 22. It reads, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. And the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid." Man. All right. Hey, and these are the days, man, that we're living, man. Right? The Lord said, "Suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown," man. Right? Hey, and that's insane. Right? For more than double, right, your so-called grocery stores, right, be quote unquote, just gone, man. Right? A lot of your pharmacies, right, your CVS's, man. Right? A lot of your right, your what's it called? Rite Aids, man. For your medicine, right? Things that, you may need thereof, your first aid kits, a lot of your retail stores that man want. A lot of these things, man, are soon to be gone, man. Soon to be done away with. It reads, "The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty." Right, all your stores, man, which once had an abundance thereof, man, of food, man, right, of plenty of resources, man, are now finna be found empty. Right, and again, men seen what happened, man. Just a few years ago, man. Back in January thereof, man. Right, so again, it reads, "And the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid. At that time shall friends fight one against another like enemies, and the earth shall stand in fear with those that dwell therein. The springs of the fountain shall stand still, and in 3 hours they shall not run." Man. Right, meaning what? That there's only going to soon be nothing but more anarchy, man. Soon, right, going to be, right, all sense of all types of so-called invasion and invasion of one another, man. Right, because it's only so long, man, that man is going to take, man, before they find a way to eat. Right, before they find a way to get what they may need, X, Y, and Z, whether to sustain themselves, right, to sustain their children thereof, man. Right, it's only so much that man is just going to take thereof, man. Right, and it reads, "And at that time shall friends fight one against another like enemies," man. Right, and again, for those that seen movies like, Leave the World Behind, a lot of these so-called shows and programs that they have so-called that were released, you've seen a lot of those that were once quote unquote neighbors, man, right, turn and give one another the evil eye. Right now, you're so-called going and, "Hey, I need some medicine." Right now, if they don't give the right response, man, right, you going in the house and taking it, man. Right, or right, men are going to be going inside the stores thereof, right, and taking whatsoever they want and need and please, man, thereof. Right, con. Right, so with that, right, our brother Atazwan Gabriella coming back to the precepts, and yet another cold cut. Giving, of course, all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bashur Mashak, Bamlak Yahweh Shai Tadaki. Right, Abaratza, this lesson was extremely edifying through the spirit. Right, so the next time I want to say, Shalom, come here, Shalom.